Hello and welcome, my name is Kent Trammell and this is the 10th video in a series of tutorials covering the creation of a realistic portrait in Blender. This video is the second of two parts covering hair generation. In this last part I will again be using the particle hair system to generate and style hair for our scalp. The big difference here is that I'll be using the strand rendering feature. But that's a little bit later. Right now the process starts the same way, and that's by creating a vertex group that will define our particle hair density. So I'm going to create a new group and call it scalp density, and then select some faces to go in it. Okay, so this selection, even though it's a little bit jagged along these edges and it's not quite so defined where I want the hair to definitely stop, that's okay because, again, we have the opportunity to paint some influence to be a little bit more specific. Okay, so that's selected. I'm going to hit assign with the weight up to 1. And now let's go ahead and add our particle system. So I'm going to add a new one and call it scalp. And the emitter type is going to be hair, of course. I'm going to turn on advanced and pick 2000 for my number of hairs. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. Let's pick our density, scalp density map, our vertex group. And now from jitter, switch it to random. That way we have all 2,000 hairs concentrated in that area, and that should be enough to comb from. Yeah, I definitely think that'll be enough. So I'm going to change my normal from 1 to 0.75. This is going to be a little bit more barber-like, and so I'm going to cut a lot like I'm using scissors rather than define a perfect length at the beginning. So 0.75 is going to work out fine. I don't think I'll need hair any longer than that. And I'll go ahead and start combing this. So I'm going to jump into particle edit mode. So the look I'm going for is kind of a business cut. There's going to be a part right here on the left side, and it's going to comb over this way. But it's going to be, for the most part, trimmed very well, but I'm going to say that it's towards the end of the day and it's gotten a little bit frizzled, let's say. But anyway, the first thing I'm going to do is cut my hairs to a length that I want them. And this is going to be very much a profile style cut. So I'm going to be, the hairs that I want to cut, I'm going to look at from profile and then start cutting. So this is the sideburns. So let me just cut a line up like that. Now we can see that those are a little bit short. I'm going to go a little shorter and just follow that all the way up. And now I'll slowly start orbiting around the head and then addressing the length of the rest of these hairs. Okay, so I think this length is going to be pretty good. Now I can start combing it, which is a fun part. I'm going to grab my comb and then start combing it this way, combing it over and across the head to get this business kind of groom happening. Let me go the other way to create the part best I can. The comb can be tricky. Sometimes it seems like it has a fall off, but I'm I'm not sure what's controlling that because I don't have a curve option in the particle edit tool menu. Let's see, get close. I like how the part's feeling, but the children are gonna be a big factor in finishing this groom. And by default, the geometry that you're combing around has the deflect emitter option turned on, so make sure that is turned on so we have as little penetration as possible around the ear and just the geometry in general. Alright, I think I'm to the point where I can use some hairs to get a better idea, or some children hairs to get a better idea of what my groom is doing. Yeah, so let me go ahead and add some of these. Click on interpolated and turn on children. Okay, so that's giving me a much better idea of what's happening. And the groom is okay. I think it's making sense. I can definitely edit some things. Let me turn children off and pull this shape out. Yeah, turn children back on, see what that's doing for me. Yeah, I think I like that. I think that's looking pretty natural. Let's see, bring down some of these high areas. Okay, I'm going to see, maybe push this a little bit up. That's looking pretty nice. I think that's a good groom to start with. Okay, so all right, the density is not horrible, but the only place that it sticks out as bumping me is the sideburn right here, and probably on the other side. Not too bad on the other side, but let me try combing this up and out of the way to make that work. Okay, I'm going to actually tab into edit mode. No, not edit mode. Control tab to go into weight paint mode. And let's finesse this a little bit. I'm going to select my subtract brush and make it pretty strong, and then start cutting out some influence. So we've got some rogue hairs down here, and I'm not sure why that's happening. Let me try changing my seed, see what that does for me. It's actually not changing some of those at all. I wonder why. Let me tab back, control tab back there, and try painting a little bit more. I don't know why they okay, there we go. They're gone. Cool. I'm liking the groom so far. Now we need to get a test render, see what's going on. So now is when I have to set up a different set of lights, because these area lights don't actually cast buffer shadows. See, they only have no shadow or ray shadow, which is unfortunate, but this means we have to create a new set of lights that are spotlights, so that we have buffer shadows. So to keep this organized, I'm going to create a new scene with duplicates of all these objects from the beauty scene. So up here at the top of my UI, where it says beauty, I'm going to click the plus button and link objects and rename this hair buffer. Okay, so we've got a new scene created over here, and let me jump into this scene. And well, nothing looks different because it's a copy of the other one. So I can delete these cards out of here. And now I need to duplicate these lights. So I'm going to go to my object for my light and click this 2 because there's 2 scenes using this same light. And I'm going to click the 2, which will make it unique to this scene. And this is going to be called light buff fill. I'm going to do the same to the other lights. Okay, so with these lights now unique to my hair buffer scene, I can make them spotlights. So let me, where'd they go? I have one more light plane that I need to get rid of. Okay, so I'm going to select these lights one by one and change them to spotlights. So the settings for this key light, the energy is going to be 40. I'm going to make the color slightly yellow or orange, a little warm. The method is going to be deep. I'm going to change my filter type to tint. And soft, I'm going to leave it 3. Bias, I'm going to leave it 1. I'm going to change the sample buffers to 4. And then my size, I'm going to bump it up to 1024 from 512. 1024 will increase my shadow map size, therefore allowing some finer shadows to come into play. That doesn't need to be huge because we're not going for individual shadows on each of these hairs. We just want to bump that up a little bit. 512's a little bit too low. I'm going to change up my samples to 8. 3 is again just too low. And that's it for the shadows. And I'm going to leave my spot shape the same. So I'm going to run through and change these settings for the other 2 lights. Okay, now with my lights set up, I can click on my head, go to my particle systems tab, and turn on strand render over here. And I'm going to change my steps to 6. Changing it higher than 6 will increase the render time pretty noticeably. So I'm going to keep it at 6 to make it a little bit smoother of a curve for the hairs. The material I'm going to change to 6 because that's our beard material just to test from. So I think now I'm ready to set up for a buffer shadow test. Except I need to switch my tri-layer material to the gray material. Save render time. Okay, cool. So let me try a test. Alright, so his hair is feeling a little bit too big at the moment, but the density looks pretty nice. I think that's a good amount of hairs. And it only took 2 minutes and 48 seconds. With ray tracing, with the same hair count, it's taken me 45 minutes to an hour and a half to render all these hairs with ray tracing. So strand rendering is a lifesaver as far as render time, but it requires buffer shadows, which, as you can see here, are completely unrealistic. They do some really funky things, like right here the shadow sort of just disappears under the nose, even though it clearly should be there. We can see some anti-aliasing from the size of the map, so that's not too good. But this is where we really have to cheat, because I can't sit around and wait 45 minutes to an hour and a half for these renders to come through, even though it is a better look and it's more accurate. But it's good to know how to use strand rendering and buffer shadows. This is honestly the only reason I use buffer shadows, but it can make render times very practical in comparison. So first thing to do is shrink the hair and just finesse the groom a little bit. So jump back to my 3D view, and then in particle edit mode, I will start combing this around. Okay, so that groom is a little bit more finessed. I could perhaps go a little bit more, but and we have these hairs showing up again. So let me go ahead and what happens if I cut these? There we go, they're gone. Cut these too. I don't know, sometimes the cut tool works and sometimes it doesn't. I really don't get it, to be honest. Anyway, okay, so this is working good. I can go ahead and trim up the back side here. It looks a little bit too rough, so let me cut that down a little bit now. There we go, cool. And I think I'm going to go ahead and add a shader specific to this guy. So remember, this is material 7, and I'm actually going to, well, no, I'll start with the strand beard, and I will add a new slot, pick my strand beard material, and duplicate it, and name it strand scalp. Okay, and over here I want to go ahead and add my, where is it? The tip fade ramp. Where is it? Strand tip fade. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this one as well. Call it tip fade B. And because I want to have control over this one separately from the eyebrows. Okay, let's see our render now. So looks like I made another mistake. Let's see where that is. Oh, here we go. The when I added the tip fade B, the coordinates defaulted to generated, so I need to change that to strand particle, which also means the influence defaulted to color. I need to change that to alpha. And then go back to the material settings, turn on transparency, and turn alpha to 0. There, that should be a much different look. Yeah, that's more like it. We've got some nice fade happening with the strands here, you can see. Okay. The hair's looking all right. It's still a little too perfect. I think I'm going to go in and mess around with the influence of my vertex group at the hairline right here. So let me jump back to my 3D view and control tab into weight paint mode. And let's just start subtracting some of this weight. Okay, that's a little bit more random. Okay, so maybe it's time to start messing with our children settings. Let's see. The first one I want to try is the parting. It's kind of cool because it auto detects if you've started a part, and I guess it samples what hairs are parting away from each other at a certain distance maybe. But anyway, as I slide this up, we can see my part further, which is kind of cool. But if we rotate around, we can see that it's getting a little funky. So it's perhaps a little too high. I'm going to change it to, let's go to 0.5, see what that's doing. That might be okay. It might be neat to have some randomness happening. Next, I want to address the length of my children. So I'm glad my hairs are a little bit long, again, because it gives me the ability to mess with this length and threshold. So I'm going to change the length down to, let's say, 0.4. And now he's got almost a military cut. But if I drag my threshold up, we can see them start to pop back into place. And I'm going to change my length to 0.6 and my threshold to, let's just round it up to 0.4. Okay, that should give us some variety now in the length. Okay, so now let's start tweaking the roughness. For the uniform slider, I'm going to change it to 0.5. And then we can see just our hairs sort of shifted. So 0 and then 0.5. Just gives us some overall randomness happening. I'm going to change my size to 1.4. And now go down here to my random value and type in 1. And this is where it can get crazy. Very, very frizzy like. I'm going to leave my size at 1 and then my threshold put at 0.5. So that way half of my hairs are frizzing out and the other half is staying fairly combed. Alright, so with those settings tweaked, yeah, it looks okay in the viewport. Let's do a render and see what we're getting. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. I like the tweaks I made to the vertex group. I think that's working nicer, and the randomness is perhaps not enough right now. It still is a little too uniform, a little too perfect as far as the comb. I want it to be a little more messed up, and the specular value is really bumping me, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off specular completely and not expect to turn it back on for the scalp hair at all. And let's see what else is looking cool. Oh, this section right here, what I really like about the rim light that I have shining on this side of the face is what it does to the hair. And remember, I've got transparency turned on, not transparency, translucency turned on. And so I'm getting this nice glow around the hair, and I think that adds a lot to it stylistically and realistically as well. So I'm going to add another light and shine it directly from the back and just crank up the power. So that way I will get that effect more or less happening around the entire edge of the hair. So let me go ahead and tweak my material settings, turn the specularity off completely, and then jump into the 3D viewport. I'm going to duplicate. Oh, I'm in the wrong scene. Let me jump to the proper scene hair buffer. And okay, so I've made a mistake. When I duplicated my lights, the light objects, I also needed to duplicate the light data, which I literally just found out. So the problem with that is in my beauty scenes, now they're also spotlights. Even though they're different objects, they contain the same light data, and now they are spotlights set up for buffer shadow rendering. So I need to do a little bit of cleanup and append some lights from a previous scene. So that's a mistake by me. Lesson learned, whenever I'm making an object unique, I also need to make the object data unique. So I'm going to quickly append my area ray trace lights so I don't have to worry about that later. So here we go. I have my light fill, light key, and light rim. They are area lights with ray trace shadows, and they're unique users to this scene. Okay, so now that that's cleaned up, I can get back to rendering with buffer shadows. So in my proper scene hair buffer, what I want to do is duplicate this light and then rotate with cursor as my pivot. I'm going to rotate that around to the back. Straight on at the back. Maybe rotate it a little bit up. So rotate around the x-axis. Move it up a little bit. Okay, this light's energy is going to be 100. I'm going to change the fall off from inverse square to inverse linear, which will make it significantly powerful compared to the others. I'm also going to keep buffer shadow turned on, deep. All the other settings are going to stay the same, except I'm going to change the samples to 4 because I'm not really too worried about those. Yeah, and everything else stays the same. So let me do a render of that to just see if we're getting the rim happening that we wanted. Okay, so we can see that the light is causing the rim effect that we want up here, but not really around the entire head of hair. So I think that was my fault in rotating it and moving it up a little bit too much. So let me try and undo that, rotate it down in X, and move it down in Z. Yeah, hopefully that'll be more what I want. Okay, anyway, so another thing, let me go back to my UV image editor. Another thing that's bumping me is it looks like the roughness is causing some issues down here penetrating the scalp. And the reason I think it's the roughness is this was our last render without roughness, and we don't have any penetration. And then with roughness, we got some funky penetration happening. So what I want to do is paint another vertex group, and this is going to control the value of roughness across the head. So if I go back to my 3D view and go to select my head, go to object data, add a new vertex group. This is going to be called scalp roughness. And I haven't taken full advantage of exactly how much control you can have over your particle system with vertex groups, because we have, let's see, density down here, we have length, we have clump, kink, roughness 1, 2, and roughness EN. I'm not sure what that EN means. But anyway, we can control all of these with vertex groups. And also we can control stuff with texture maps. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and add my scalp roughness vertex group to roughness 1. And see, when I click that, because the vertex group is empty, we saw a shift in the hair, and that means that the roughness has no effect anymore. Okay, so it's time to start painting in where I want roughness. So I'm going to hide the hair for now, and then jump into particle edit mode, which is completely clean. I'm going to add strength up to 100 for my add, and then start adding where I want roughness to happen. And I'm going to just paint this very generally around the top of the head, because that's where I want the roughness to be, and I do not want roughness around my sideburns. So let me just paint everywhere that I want roughness, which is pretty much everywhere except for the sideburns. Okay, and now when I Control Tab out of weight paint mode and then rehide the scalp, we can't see too much changing here, but when I do the render, that's what's going to prove if this fixed the interpenetration we had happening around the sideburn area. So let me do that now. There we go. So now we can see that we have no more interpenetration happening above the ear around the sideburns on either side. So that's pretty cool. It's I think this dark area right here is perhaps too abrupt of an ending to the influence, so I am going to change that now in 3D view and hide my hair, my scalp, Control Tab into weight paint mode, grab my blur brush rather, and then just blur this. Let me make the influence a little less. There we go. With this blurred fall off, we should not have an abrupt ending to the roughness influence anymore, and not get some hair artifacting. Alright, so if I jump back to my UV image editor, this rim effect that I'm trying to get is really still concentrated in one area, and it's not extending to the entire hair particle system. So what I think I can do is move the light back in 3D space, which will lessen the intensity right in this area, but hopefully spread it to the entire rim of the hair. So let me try that, and then also I'm going to tweak some more roughness settings to try and get a more rough look. Okay, so I can, let's see, go to object mode. I'm going to reveal my scalp. I think that'll look pretty good. And let me grab this back rim, which let me name it properly. I'm going to call it rim B, and the other one rim A. So cool, that is rim A. Let me move it back in 3D space a little bit. Let's try that. Okay, so back to the roughness settings. Let me change, let's see, first I want to change the size. Let's just see what that's doing for me. Change the slider back and forth. It seems the higher I go in size, the less effect the roughness has. And then the lower I go, the more effect it has. So maybe my threshold needs to be, let's change it from 0.5 to 0.3. There we go, I've got some roughness happening. Still maybe a little bit too frizzy, but let's go ahead and do a render and see if that helps. Oh my, it looks like we gave him an afro, which is very cool, don't get me wrong, but it's not what I'm going for here. So those roughness settings are not working out. That's weird that it looks so different in the viewport. That's a little frustrating. Anyway, I'm going to change these back to the values I had before, 1 and then 0.5. I don't think that's where I want that to happen. Let's go with uniform. Let me bump that up to 0.7. So that just shifts it around a little bit. And then size. That's really just kind of moving it as if wind were blowing through it a little bit. Okay, so I'll leave it like that, I guess. I'll go ahead and add some textures that I think will help out our hair system a bit. So if I jump to the material textures, we have beard color set up, and we also have a strand tip fade, which is good. I want to add another texture, and I'm going to call this strand ramp A. What this is going to do, instead of plugging in an alpha along the strand of my follicles, I'm going to put a color in there. And this is going to help sort of to fake like an AO sort of look, where the strand is darker at the root than the tip. And it's just going to sort of add a little bit of dimension into my hair. Right now it still feels a little bit flat, but this is totally faking and not accurate. Anyway, the texture type is going to be a blend again, and I'm going to jump into my ramp right now, and let's go ahead and flip it like I did last time, and select the top row, or the right color stop, and then add the alpha to 1. No, now I want to flip it. Whoops, so I didn't need to flip it at all. So what this is going to do right now is my strand, think of it laid out, root is at the left, and then the tip is at the right. So right now the root is darker than the tip. And I'm going to change the coordinates to strand, and it's going to affect the color, and it's going to be a multiply over the beard color. So let's render that and see what that gives us. Now if I switch between the non-textured version and then the version with the ramp texture, we can just see a little bit more depth happening in the hair. We can start to see some individual strands poking out of here, which we could see individual strands here, but it just looks flat. And this brings a little bit more of that 3D feel back into it. However, I think it's too strong. I don't want it to be that black. And I also want to adjust my beard color texture and make that exclusive to the scalp. So first, with my ramp selected, I'm going to drag up this black color stop a little bit, and then change the interpolation mode to B-spline. Actually, and then drag it up a little bit more. And the color value I'm going to change to, well, let's do 0.5. And now for the beard color, I want more gray coming through. So I think I'm going to turn the noise back to soft, and then drag a little bit more influence for the gray. Okay, so now I'm going to render that. So obviously these gray areas are a little bit too broad. I need to bring down my scale a bit. So with my texture, I'm going to scale down the clouds to, let's go to 0.1. And in general, his hair's just not messy enough for me. And messier hair is easier to get looking realistic, in my opinion. It kind of goes along with, I guess, if you're trying to make something look real in CG, just beat it up, make it look old and dirty and grimy, and then it'll look much more real. So that's kind of what I'm going for with the hair. Not grimy, but just messy. So let me go to my 3D view and back into particle edit mode. So things don't always go perfectly in my tutorials. I got a good result from my exploratory scene, but it's just not quite carrying over into this recording. So let me just hide the children and just try and comb for a bit, see if I can get a look that I like. So now with that combed around, kind of just getting a random feel to everything, my own brand of waviness and ruffiness and stuff like that. Let me do a render and see if that's doing us any good. Okay, so I think this is a step in the right direction. This is before and after. We just have some waviness and randomness happening, and I like that a bit more. Now I want to try and shorten the hairs, and I'm going to do that with my texture map that I have plugged into the alpha channel. So that's this tip fade B, and I'm just going to bring down these color stops, and this will make the hair a little bit shorter. Okay, so I actually don't like the alpha shortened, so I'm going to revert back to this. And also I want to tweak my roughness settings. So let me go back to the 3D viewport, go to my particle system, and maybe some clumping will help. I see that I've left that untouched. Let's change that to 0.2, just add a little bit of clumpiness. And the shape I'm going to take to the positive value to 0.7. Okay, well, let me bump up clumping so I can see more of an effect. Yeah, I think I see, yeah, we've got some clumping happening now. And I think I want a little bit more frizz. Maybe I can get that with some curl. Let me turn the frequency from 2 to 1. That might do what I want. Maybe turn the frequency to 0.5 actually. Yeah, I wonder what that'll do for me. Let's try a render. Okay, I like that. I think I'm getting pretty close. Yeah, that's feeling pretty nice to me. Alright, so we can see that this curliness is happening still in the sideburns area and also down here. So I'm thinking that roughness 2 needs to have the same vertex group as roughness 1. Let me add that and do another quick render. Okay, so yeah, that seems to have taken care of these rogue curly hairs. That's good. I really like where this is going. I'm almost done. Let's see, there's one more thing. There's actually two more things I want to do. First, I'm going to jump into my textures for my shader and jump to the tip fade alpha. And it's pretty common for me to not only add alpha transparency to the tip of the hair, but also a little bit to the root. So with this furthest color stop over here to the left, I'm going to pull that up a little bit and then drag its alpha down to 0. Put it about right there, and then add another color stop and turn its alpha all the way up to 1, and then drag that down to meet the root a little bit. So about like that. And what we'll see in the render is the roots sort of soften up. Right now they're very harsh, and the transition into the scalp is not very smooth. So I want to ease that transition a little bit, and that's going to be done with this alpha map. And then what I'm hoping is a final tweak into the realm of realism is going to be in the world settings. I'm going to duplicate the world and call it world buffer, and turn my environment lighting from 0.03 to 0.3, keeping it at white. So this next render should hopefully be the last one, fingers crossed. Yeah, there we go. This is more like what I wanted. The transition is much more appropriate, not so harsh if I switch back and forth. And also the environment lighting just softens up the shadows. And so I'm going to call it a day for this tutorial. I think it's been long enough. In the next video is going to be the final composition. I'm going to show you how I render this hair with buffer shadows, but then render the hair shadows onto the scalp with ray tracing, and then composite those elements back together. Just composite all the elements that I've separated back together. With the background scene, I'm going to shift the camera a little bit, shift the lighting a bit as well, and end up with a final image. So I really appreciate it if you've made it this far. Hair is a tricky thing, a very tricky thing to explain, but I hope you took some things from my workflow and can apply it in your own work. So anyway, one more video to go and we are done. Thank you for watching.